Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Talking Wolves YouTube channel. It's me, Gully, and with Wolves currently managerless, due to announce the appointment of Rob Edwards, myself, Dan, and Tom all thought it would be a good idea to kind of dig into what a new manager would bring to Wolves, and obviously the news is pretty much out now that Rob Edwards is set to be announced as the new Wolves manager. We're going to have a look at the rest of this season, what it means for the club, what it means for Edwards. Is he a good or bad appointment, in our opinion? And the kind of details around whether Edwards is a good fit for Wolverhampton Wanderers, for the squad, and our future objectives ultimately. But we'll get into introducing the rest of the guys on the pod. Tom, nice to have you with us. It's the first time I think we've done a pod together, which is great. People will know you from the What We Learnt series that you do on the channel. But how you keeping?
Not too bad. Yeah, it's good to finally sort of collaborate on something. We've spoke about it for a little while, but yeah, not too bad overall. The football is a little bit depressing. It gets harder to do the what we learned when we lose every week, because you sort of just repeating sort of the same points tactically and just in general, the atmosphere around the club isn't great. But honestly, apart from that, yeah, it's been okay.
I think you've done a pretty good job of putting a positive face on it. At least you never look like you're too upset about it. So fair play, because sometimes I think if you're not feeling great about it, it's really difficult to kind of present yourself in the right way, right? But so
Yeah,
good on
yeah,
you for
yeah.
that. Good on you for that. And Dan, how are you, mate?
I'm all right, mate. Yeah. Am I allowed to say I'm excited a little bit?
Oh,
I don't know
really?
if I should be feeling
You
like
was,
that.
you was
Well,
at the game on Saturday as well. I was like,
I was there the week before as well. I've got no reason to be excited, really. But
Brave
um,
man.
yeah, look, we got rid of a certain someone, and yeah, you've got to be excited at times like this, haven't you? This is the chance.
yeah, I guess there's always a feeling of excitement around a new manager, new transfers, all that kind of stuff. So the excitement comes from that hope of things going a slightly different way compared to what they could. Change is definitely of a benefit to us at this moment in time. I mean, sadly, quite predictably, based on the way we spoke pre-season, Dan, it's unravelled, but a lot quicker than I thought we envisaged, right?
Yeah, I don't think I had a 3 month timeline as how quickly it would go wrong. I think, like you referenced there, we did talk about it in the second part of the squad building video, and we sort of said the way that reshuffle had gone within the club was putting a lot of power in one place, and perhaps not with one person who, or not with a person who it should necessarily be trusted in. Um, so yeah, it did go wrong slightly quicker than we thought, but the sort of the path was there for it to happen at some point. But I'm trying to maintain some sort of optimism that we're going to come out the other side of that with some learnings at least, and maybe in a couple of months' time, Tom's videos will be a little bit more upbeat.
Yeah, I guess Tom, from your perspective, I don't know, you've had a chance to really outline your thoughts on Vitor Pereira and his departure in detail, but the fact he's gone now, was it timely for you? Was it too late? What's your take on it?
To be honest, I think probably a little bit too late. I had similar vibes to Gary O'Neill, unfortunately, in the sense that we'd sort of everything had boiled over again, and we've sort of let it get to that point where everything's boiled over with the fans and the players. Obviously, fortunately this time we didn't have any players grabbing glasses off coaching staff's faces, which is an improvement of sorts. But when you've got your own manager sort of gesticulating to the South Bank, it's not a great look. Yeah, I mean, I've said this a few times on the channel. To be fair, I said it in What We Learned. I said it after the Burnley game. I still back myself with this now, but I still think it's one of the most damaging appointments under Fosun. I think that the decision to hire Tetty off the back of hiring him and to give him a lot of the control, more control than we've seen any other manager have in terms of the recruitment, was in hindsight a big mistake. But I had my concerns at the start of the summer, to be honest. I think there's. I mean, if you scroll down far enough on my timeline, there's a quote tweet of me somewhere saying I am a little bit concerned about just how in we're going with Pereira, because as we've seen over the past few years, if this goes wrong this time, then you've got a director of football to sort out. And obviously, as we've seen over the course of the past couple of weeks, Tetty is now left, with I think Matt Jackson being the most senior figure, bar Jeff Shee. So it's another restructure, and this whole summer essentially it's been undone in 3 months. So it's a real kick in the teeth, I think, and in on the balance of things, and in hindsight, a very naive decision. Which, after being in the Premier League for the amount of time that we've been in, I'm surprised that we're still making naive decisions, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's back to the drawing board, right? In terms of the overall way the club is run, and look, plenty of column images have been written already on the ownership and their lack of real understanding for how serious the situation is, I think. And we won't get into that. We are here to try and focus on the football as much as possible, be objective, and probably try and take a little bit the emotion out of it. But you can't help but feel, with the way the appointment of Edwards has been made, that the emotion's going to get involved, right? You know, the Middlesbrough fan reaction has been nothing short of livid. And there seems to be, Rob Edwards coming in under a little bit of a cloud. Dan, what's your view on the manner of his departure from Middlesbrough?
I think the tribal football fan in me loves it. Like, this is the sort of thing we want. We want a common enemy. Like, that's all I've ever known at Wolves, is we've got a shared hatred of someone. It's whether in the same division as Albion, Blues, Villa. It doesn't really matter. We all hate someone. So having to galvanise against something else is sort of part and parcel of supporting Wolves. I think it feels like something quite natural. It does seem like there's been quite an organised media hit job on him since it's been confirmed. Well, I say since it's been confirmed, but since the talks have started, though, I don't think I'd have imagined this sort of reaction from so many different areas. Fans completely understand it. If I was a Middlesbrough fan, I'd feel the exact same way. I'd be taking to social media to voice my opinions and say the exact same things. Maybe not exact the same things, actually, because some of the stuff I've seen has been quite harsh. But I'd be feeling the exact same way as them. But certain members of the media as well jumping on the back of him. I think when you take into account all of the off the pitch stuff that is involved in his, decision to join us in the end, it seems like a hell of a lot of backlash for what seemed like quite a straightforward decision for him. He gets to join a Premier League club. Now, granted, that might be until May only, and then he has to revisit that choice. He gets to move back to his family. He's from the area. He used to play for us. I think I was only about 12, 13 when he did play for us, maybe a little bit younger. So I haven't got the fondest memories of what he was like. I don't think he was a superstar by any stretch, but he's got links to the club. I don't think it's this massive story that the media are painting it out to be. By all means, Borough fans, crack on, be angry, that's all you want. I'd do the exact same thing. But anyone else, I'd say, get off your high horse a little bit, because there's a lot worse going on in the world of football than Rob Edwards choosing to go back to a club he's already got links to.
Yeah, I think it's quite intriguing to me, actually, that British managers, I've always found, tend to get a little bit of an easier ride in the media than others. Gary O'Neill being, a perfect example of that during his time at the club. Easy ride from me as well, right? Because so he's got to have some
Number one
backing
fan.
like that. There you go. Funnily enough, being linked with the Middlesbrough job now, so life does kind of come full circle, doesn't it? I guess the one takeaway I found from, and I'm expecting Borough fans to probably have a listen to this as well. So it'll be an interesting to hear kind of the feedback loop. Hopefully, without the kind of real anger that's laced the way they're speaking about Edwards. But to me, the start to the season they've made, when I've looked into some of the numbers and data, I think it's not necessarily as hopeful regards promotion as it might look right now. And I mean, look, this is a football club who last time we played them was the game where we ended up with 9 men um, during our promotion year, right? So they've been down in the Championship for a long while, kind of 8, 9 years. A club that's used to kind of being in and out of the Premier League. So there definitely will be a feeling of angst around the fact that they feel like they're so near, despite obviously it being early in the season, and yet so far, and things might derail things on that basis. But you know, Tom, I mean, when you see Edwards and the decision he's made and the feeling he's evoked, do you think he'll be having any kind of reservations about joining us before he kicks off?
It's a good question. I think with any big decision in anyone's life, I think there's always, a sort of a crossroads in your own mind as much as anyone else's. I mean, I've made some pretty big life and career changes, and you do think about, how that's going to look in 3 years' time, or how that's going to affect job prospects, or is it going to build on what you have? I think there's all, and you got to remember, this is a job as well. Like, as well as it being part of the football sphere and an entertainment industry as much as a sport as well, it's a job for Edwards. And if you were offered better pay temporarily in a higher division, we don't know, closer to family, probably more comfortable. And he's made no secret in previous interviews that this is a dream job for him. I think that those doubts will probably be outweighed by his want to do well at this club. And for Wolves fans, I think that there's solace in the fact that at least that this is a manager that doesn't just want to manage in the Premier League, as Vitor Pereira was quite honest about saying. He just wanted to manage in the Premier League. Um, I think there's solace in the fact that he wants to manage Wolves, and he has said that he wants to manage Wolves at some point. I think that's a very important thing in the current situation that we're in, where the sort of the theme within the fan base has been disillusionment. At least there now we have a figurehead of the team that has ties to and can relate to the fan base. So there'll be doubts there, no doubt. It's a big decision for him, and a lot of the criticism that he's going to get in the press is going to be tough. But he's been in management for a few years, so I think the motivation to try and get something out of this squad is going to outweigh those doubts.
Yeah, well, moving on to kind of the football then. I mean, I said this before we started recording. I don't mean this to be asked as a stupid question because I think there's much more to it than meets the eye. What are the objectives for the rest of the season? Because I mean, you look at it, a point a game from where we are, 27 games left, has actually maintained the Premier League status of clubs within the last couple of years. It's not an inconceivable idea that Wolves can reach a points tally that actually keeps us in the league. Whether we're capable of doing that is an entirely different question, though. And I guess, Dan, from your point of view, what do you want to see between now and the final game of the season?
I think part of me is, despite the excitement of having a new face or a familiar face in this sense, in the dugout, there's a bit of excitement there. There is a part of me that sort of resigned to the fact that we are more than likely going down. And so what matters to me more at this point, where we are currently in the league and how things have gone so far, is the manner in which we go down. So obviously plan A is stay in the Premier League, but with things stacking up against us and the way we've played this far, it's not going to happen. It's not looking likely. And without serious investment in January again, it's just not going to happen. So I think if you can get fans back on side, get Molineux loud again, play some sort of brand of football that does reinvigorate us as fans and make us excited to watch the side, there's going to be a victory in doing that, even if we do go down. And it sounds quite defeatist, and it sounds like just trying to put lipstick on a pig, for lack of a better term. But if we are sort of resigned to the fact we are going to go down or more than likely going down. I'd like to see us do it in some sort of way that makes me think, let's keep him on for when we do go down. And next season, we've got the foundation of something that actually we go into the championship and we don't stay there for 3, 4, 5 seasons. We look like the sort of side that's going to go straight back up because of the manner in which we've gone down. There's a lot to be said for momentum carrying over, even when you do get relegated. You don't want to turn into an Albion. You know, they're mired there. They don't look like they're getting out again this season. And I just think that has to be one of the biggest things that I want to enjoy watching my football club again. And I can't remember the last time that I actually liked watching us play. It's been an absolute drag for a long, long time now. I know people go back to the 6 wins on the spin. Fair enough. I was never convinced. It's easy to say in hindsight. It all felt a little bit inauthentic. And yes, I am definitely going to take every opportunity to stick the boot in on Vitor because don't rate him, don't like him particularly. If I'm excited watching this club again, I think Edward's done a good job for me.
Yeah, I guess Tom, we've actually become quite accustomed at times to just Wolves playing relatively boring football, right? It's we think about back to towards the end of Nuno's tenure, Bruno Lage's season, full season as manager, Lopetegui, nothing particularly to say that we were a really, really kind of enterprising football team. We had quality, we had a solid defence, generally speaking, and you know, you take away that kind of foundation, and you're left with what we're left with, right? And this, it felt like sometimes Vitor
Yeah.
kind of conceded almost the idea that we can play good football this season to me, and that for me was a bit of a real letdown.
Yeah, and especially when you compare his comments in the press to the previous season, because there was a few times last year where he spoke a lot about wanting to build something, beautiful or play good football and play beautiful football, which, I mean, you can probably chalk it up to, maybe being, in his case, naive or overly optimistic. But I do genuinely think that there is a difference in mentality between the Vitor Pereira we saw last year and the Vitor Pereira we saw this season, despite being, fairly well backed. Um, I think that the foundation of what he had the season before was certainly lost. I think the profiles of the players that he brought in, I'm amazed that he didn't bring in more ball carriers when the vast majority of his success last season was down to those types of players. It's just mind boggling, really. Some of the decisions that were made and the backtracking, and then just being a little bit, for want of a better term, salty in the press. I don't really like using that word, but it did feel a bit bitter and defensive, and just didn't seem to, as other Wolves managers, to be fair, have done as when their times come to an end, just not take too much accountability for poor substitutions, team selections, falling out with key players. You can't be falling out with Andre and Joao Gomez. You just can't, which is probably a sad indictment on maybe player power as well. But they're your two best players, and you've got to build your team around them. And once Pereira lost those two, it was never ever going to work, because you've got nothing in reserve, as we feared in the summer with the lack of midfield depth. And yeah, it just all sort of capitulated for him, really, and he sort of just gave up, really, with some of his selections and the football that we were playing.
Yeah, I think it's never been more clear to me. Football managers, first and foremost, just kind of have to be like really good salesmen, right, to get that buy-in from their squads, because they're always going to be beholden to the players that they're putting out on the pitch. If one or two of them want to toss it off, you're not going to win Premier League football matches, and that's all it takes. It doesn't take much. It's the standard of football is such that the percentages really really matter. Um, we put a couple of polls out before the pod. One of which was, will Edwards keep us up? And I appreciate that. is not necessarily a fair way of posing the question based on his coaching ability alone, right? But 91% of people said no. And that could be simply because there probably isn't a manager out there who you could hang your hat on to say, this guy can still ensure that this group of players are playing in the Premier League next season. Um, so on that basis, what do you think is his first priority into when we kick off against Palace after the international break? What do you think the first thing he tries to address is?
It's a good question because there are so many areas you could address. I think the one thing you can leave alone to an extent, anyway, is the back line. That has actually ran all right in terms of the numbers this season. So I certainly wouldn't be trying to do too much with that. I think you've got to find a way to get support in and around Strand Larson. That's one of the biggest things I think he can do early doors to get us looking better going forward. Like you said, I was there Saturday, and I'm sure everyone was watching back home as well. He was so isolated, and he took pelters on X, and fair enough, he wasn't good enough, and his pressing wasn't good enough either. But there were times where, unlike Strand Larson of last season, he was actually winning his duels, and he's not necessarily any good at that, but he was able to pin his centre back and lay the ball off for someone, and all of a sudden we were off. Um, if you can get men in and around him, I think he starts to look closer to what he was last season. Um, I am not enough of a tactician to tell you exactly how Edwards should do that, but it'd be one of the first areas I'd try to address is, can you try and get men closer to that centre forward, and can you get him firing again? I think we'll probably come on to Edwards' specific style of football a little bit later on. But that, alongside just being a little bit more on the front foot, we're at home. Palace are an excellent side. Obviously, I wouldn't expect us to turn them over, but just having Molyneux galvanised and excited to watch the team for once, I think that could go quite a way. And it doesn't mean we have to beat them. It doesn't even mean we have to get a point against them. It's just got to be something to give people a little bit of hope, and go from there.
To be honest, I think it's a perfect time to get into Edwards and his style of football. Actually, so we'll do that now. We do have obviously a little bit of an insight based on the fact that he's managing the Premier League relatively recently. His career's taken him from kind of Telford United to Forest Green. He's actually, covered the breadth of the Football League in many ways, which I think will give him insights into how he should approach things to a certain extent. I don't think we'll be seeing the inverted fullbacks that he tried at Wolves when he had those two games in charge as interim between Walter Zenga and Paul Lambert. Who knows? Maybe Cameron Borthwick Jackson still got a chance as a Premier League player. But my my first thoughts when I thought about Edwards as a manager at Luton, genuinely quite attacking actually, considering the group of players that they had. Scored quite a lot of goals, and he had a proper front two in Carlton Morris and Elijah Adebayo that you could draw comparisons between, say, Tolu and Jurgen Strand Larsen. Tom, does that feel like a route towards him perhaps having some success?
I think so. I think it's also important that we try and use our players properly. I think some of the signings that we've brought in have been slightly misprofiled. I think Tolu, for example, I don't think he's a target man. Like, he has aspects of his game that can make him that, obviously with his height and his physicality, but he's so good in behind. If you look at the goals that he's scored for us, the one against Everton, it's a great ball from Gomez. He's running behind, great finish. Similar as well with the goal against Chelsea. Hwang, good pass, runs onto it, great first touch, good finish. So it's all about trying to get him better service and not just lumping up the ball to him. Because we saw that the one time we tried to do it against Chelsea, he had a really poor first touch and we eventually conceded from it. It's not his game. Same thing with Strand Larson. He is far better at bringing others into play, and we've seen that. He almost created that equaliser against Burnley in the last minute. I think it was him that set up Santiago Bueno with a really nice bit of play. So there's aspects of both of these players that, if we're talking about a front two of Morris and Adebayo, was it Adebayo? Oh, sorry, that's really poor for me forgetting the pronunciation there. But both of those looked fantastic under Edwards. They looked so good. So for me, that fills me with promise that with a front two of the quality of Strand Larson and Tolu, that he can probably get the best out of him, and that's going to be key. Really, I also think, as we spoke about earlier, in terms of the first thing he's got to do, he's got to change the mentality of the players. They look shot for confidence. And he is known as a very good man motivator and very good at building a good dressing room rapport with his players. So, first and foremost, he's got to get those players believing that they can win a game of football. Because if he does that and then we end up winning just one or two games, you can start to see this team maybe shift. Because we saw that under Pereira in the 6 in a row. We got one win and then it just went from there. And when this team plays with confidence, they're a good team. They're a very, very solid Premier League team. So, he's got to get the most out of those two and change the way we press as well, I think, is an important point.
Yes, having a look back at some of the data, Dan, where Luton were concerned, they actually were top of the league for crosses played into the box. I think Vitor, to be honest, very much took that as our MO anyway. We were very much focused on trying to get the ball into wide areas. Hugo Bueno, proficient in getting the ball into the box. Right wing back is obviously a concern in terms of the quality that could be delivered. But I mean, in general terms, we haven't delivered the right kind of service into our strikers at the moment. I guess we'd hope the way in which we approach the penalty area is going to change.
Yeah, I think so. I think we've got to change the way that we transition and get the ball up the pitch because we're just so slow. I mean, watching us, it's like as soon as we get the ball back, there doesn't seem to be the same desire to get the ball forward as quickly as we used to. It seems like a weird mesh between possession based and counter attacking football where the players aren't quite sure whether they want to be really direct or they want to build from the back. And I think that's where we've seen a lot of inconsistency in the way that we attack. And there's actually no real, for want of a better term, patterns of play. I think a big concern for me is the delivery from right back. Left back, I think, is fine, honestly. Moller Wolf and Bueno have shown at times that they have a real quality in terms of putting the ball in. I think Bueno, for me, has probably been one of the bright sparks. So I think Edwards will get a lot out of him. I mean, I was looking at some numbers earlier, and his Luton team put over 800 crosses in that 23-24 season, and his Forest Green team put in over 1,000 when they won League Two. So if we are to believe that he's going to use similar fundamentals, I think that the wing backs are going to be way more involved. Left back, left wing back should probably be a position that to keep an eye out on under Edwards. I think Hugo Bueno, we might see more goal contributions coming from him, depending on what's asked of him. He and Moller Wolf are the only ones that have really shown sort of any quality in the final third at the moment. So I think that's an interesting point. Like Dan said, it's exciting. I think if we can start to get Chichua maybe a bit further up the pitch, his crossing's not fantastic, but the more he does it, surely the better he's going to be at it. And if he's coached better, then he might be putting it into areas that are more productive for Tolu and Strand Larson. And then I'm, as an aside as well, quite interested to see what he thinks he can do with Arias as well, because he's a good creator, but we haven't really seen a lot from him so far.
Yeah, I guess we're taking it as read that he's going to use the back three because he's done that with Luton and obviously had success getting them promoted, but the squad has been shaped as such. Dan, I mean, to your mind, do you still? It wasn't the case at Borough that he played that way, but do you still assume that we're likely to see a back three shape with wing backs?
Yeah, I think it has to be. I think we made our minds up in the summer when we gave Vitor the power that we did, that this was going to be a back three squad, come rain, come shine, whoever it was that was in charge. Even if it was a situation like we find ourselves in now, where someone's had to come in mid-season, they are going to have to deal with the tools they've been given, and it is just going to be a back three squad. I think piggybacking off something Tom said there, I'd be really interested to see how we platform Bueno in particular. I think we've seen what his crossing ability can be like. And it's about getting him in the areas where he can deliver with quality. I think it's all very well us sort of talking about let's just spam crosses and hope for the best. We've got two big men in the middle. You know, at some point, one of them's going to get first contact on the ball and hopefully it drops, maybe it goes in. But we need to get him in the final third consistently and delivering from areas nearer the byline rather than from deep. And another thing you said as well, Tom, just sort of backing up there a little bit, was that we are actually at times quite a competent football side. Like I think we conceded that first goal at Chelsea on Saturday, and all of a sudden the left side was popping it around, and I thought, hang on a second, what's changed here? How have they suddenly got the confidence to knock it around? Kwang was dropping deep into the half space, and when I was going beyond him, and it was the best spell we had in the game. So this side is more than capable of passing to the point of getting players into the right areas to then deliver or to then platform them in the best way we possibly can with regards to someone like an Arias. It's just a case of giving them the confidence to do so. But yeah, back to the broader point, Gully, 100% this is going to be a back three situation. I think when I was doing my research, I looked back on the Luton side specifically because they're probably the best comparison we have just in terms of Premier League side for Premier League side. They were very direct. There's a lot of long balls in there. So you'd expect us to go back to front quite quickly, which is going to suit some players and it's going to, you know, some players aren't going to enjoy that as much. I think someone like an Andre who wants to get on the ball slightly deeper is probably going to be given a slightly different role now. But maybe someone like a João Gomez who wants to pick up a second ball in midfield, that might suit him really quite nicely. But yeah, I think this is going to be back to back three Wolves once again.
The fact that you've gone out and said best comparator for us is a Luton side that were relegated relatively comfortably is makes me feel really really good about it.
Sorry, mate.
Cheers
Full
for
of
that.
promise.
Yeah. But I guess it does make sense on many levels, and especially given the fact that we're very much in the mire, right? Tom, are there any other players that you think will likely have a fruitful spell under Edwards? Anybody that you don't think is going to make it with him?
Yeah, so I mean, we've all sort of looked into it. We spoke previously about the Luton team being the most comparative, not in terms of squad, but maybe more so profiles. His style of pressing is very aggressive, very front foot, but they get stuck in really high and very early from goal kicks, from kickoffs, and just in general, they play quite a high line. So Wolves have got, albeit maybe not the best quality of times, we do have quite an athletic defence. So, there's Agbadu, he can cover ground quickly. There's Totti Gomez, he can cover ground quickly. Chichua, whilst not a central defender, still has really good recovery pace. And we saw against Brighton that he has the potential and the quality to lock up wingers if that's what's required. So, in terms of players that won't excel, I think that's yet to be seen because I still think we haven't really seen a lot of what the level of these players are capable of playing. I know that in the comments of pretty much any video that I've said this, fans believe that this team is this bad. I still don't think this team is 2 points after 11 games bad. I really don't. Granted, it's not a world beater of a team, but with competent coaching and confidence, moreover, it's a team that can finish 14th, 15th. I genuinely think that. So I think I would probably say Totti comes out. Every time I've seen him play this season, he's far too passive. I don't think he's quite aggressive enough at times or good enough on the ball. I would say that Krejci is absolutely going to thrive. He's reads the game very well, excellent distributor of the ball, can carry it. He's got good leadership qualities. I think him and Edwards are probably going to build a really good relationship. If I was to probably uh, pick someone out, I think Agbadu, with a bit of confidence, could be really good in an Edwards system. He played with a bit of a double pivot at Luton. So, again, Andre Gomez, if he can get them ticking again, like Dan alluded to, slightly different role for Andre. Might have to improve his long passing a little bit more. But they play through the lines very quickly, that Luton team, and they use that double pivot to distribute the ball quicker. So if we can have those two be more of an engine, I think they'll do well. And then with maybe either two up top or two more narrow tens, I think you'll see more of Arias and hopefully more Fer Lopez and Mateus Main as well, because Edwards does have a track record of working with young players. So I think there's a few players there that can do well, and we mentioned Bueno as well. So I do think this is a good appointment in terms of the profiles of players that we have.
Yeah, I think there is a natural fit there. I guess a lot of it still comes down to whether the players are any good or not, right? But like you said, I do. My feeling is the back five of the three defenders and the double pivot in midfield is the standard of a mid-table Premier League team, to my mind. Um, so you've got a bit of a foundation there to kind of give you something to at least go into games, standing a chance. It then comes down to how you can work with that attack. And, you're still looking at players like Strand Larson and Hwang as double figure goal scoring seasons in the Premier League. You can't discredit that sort of output in any way. We did ask the fan base if there are any players that they thought might benefit from the change in tack. I think Tolu came up a few times. Mateus Mane is someone obviously we've all kind of tried to hang our hat on somewhat as just I guess a bright spark and a bit of good feeling just to watch him play. Dan, you got a glimpse of him live at the weekend. Any first thoughts about how he did?
I think he was sort of what you'd expect from a young player who's not been given any reason to sort of fear the occasion he's been thrown into. He sort of, when he got on the ball, he ran with it, happy interchanging with teammates, confident on the ball. I think I think we talked about it. It would have been pre-Sunderland where I sort of advocated for the fact that, or it might have been after actually, but advocated for the fact that these sorts of players, sometimes you just put them in there for 10, 15 minutes because you don't know what they're going to bring to the side in terms of, it might be a confidence boost. It might be just, the fact that, as Tom alluded to earlier on, this side is so short of anything good at the moment that seeing a young lad like Mane come on and take the game to someone like a Chelsea for a 2 to 3 minute spell, 5 minutes, whatever it might be, it might just lift them up a little bit. Um, I don't. I think it all depends on how Edwards decides to set up. I think people are right in saying that Tolu might get a more of a look in now if it becomes a 3-5-2, for example. If it's a 3-4-3 with wingers, now obviously that depends on a lot of January activity, then all of a sudden Mane looks a shoe in for some more minutes as well, because I think he can take that right wing spot. Not permanently, but for sort of those half hours or 30 minutes at a time where we need fresh legs to run at a back line. I would be worried a little bit if we were to try and shoehorn him in as one of the tens, because I'm not sure that makes best use of him. I think he's so good out on the touchline that the minute you bring him infield and you crowd him around other players, you're taking part of his game away from him, where he's not able to sprint into space as much. But yeah, look, when things are as bad as they are, you have to sort of cling on to these little bits of hope. And, I think Pereira talked so many times about giving Mane minutes, and we never saw it happen. And it took Collins coming in for the one game he's going to get, and all of a sudden he gets on the pitch and he does what we expected, or what we were hoping he would do, was just pick up the ball and run with it. And that's been seemingly something we've been scared to do all season. So I'm extremely high on him, and I'd like to see some sort of role created for him in certain game states where we think we can utilize his skills best.
To be honest, I think just between now and January, there's no real options there to turn to on the bench that you would automatically suggest are ahead of him. In terms of what he brings as a footballer, right? The ball carrying, all that sort. Just again referencing Luton and Rob Edwards. Tahith Chong was quite important to them as a player, as like a third central midfielder, carrying the ball, using his pace. Traditionally brought up as a winger. I think he definitely values players with those qualities. Alfie Doughty on that left wing was unbelievable in that Premier League season. Which it's quite strange that he's no longer a Premier League footballer. But just to get into his very short spell at Middlesbrough now, I wanted to highlight some stuff that I managed to have a look at earlier today. Contrary to the way Luton played in the Premier League, they're not a free scoring side. They've only scored 19 goals yet this season. And their top scorer is actually Hayden Hackney, who is a midfielder we apparently put a bid in for towards the end of the window, or pretty much on deadline day, I think, in the summer, who may or may not be still of interest to Wolves, dependent on what kind of terms Rob Edwards left Middlesbrough under. Who knows, there might be a bit of an embargo against plucking any talent from there. I wouldn't be surprised anyway. Or at least they'll probably put 10 million quid on whatever price we want to try and sign him for. But
Yeah, there's no chance we get Hackney after this.
I was about to say, yeah, when they
There
ask for
is
50
no
mil,
chance.
I can't see it.
There is no chance we get Hackney after this.
But it would create
it'd
some
be-
more fume that we can kind of thrive off to some extent before we inevitably get relegated and play Middlesbrough next season. So, something to look forward to.
Yeah.
But yeah, the numbers from an attacking point of view, especially, don't scream excitement, enterprising forward play, anything like that. And again, look, they're all definitely managers beholden to the squad that they've got available to them. But someone like Morgan Whittaker, who was really, really good at Plymouth, done virtually nothing to speak of since he went there in January. So with a squad clearly that needs surgery in attacking areas, are we expecting perhaps maybe just to shut up shop and try and sneak 1-0s for the foreseeable time?
Maybe. It's hard to say. What I do quite like about Edwards as an appointment is that he's shown himself to be pretty adaptable to the squad that he has. So he's been pretty good at maximising what players can do. I mean, Colton Morris, no disrespect, but he made him a 10. I think he got 10 goals in the Premier League. We're talking about a player that hasn't played in the Premier League after that. But, he got the best out of what was an okay Luton squad. It was a very solid Championship side. They were never really going to stay in the Premier League, but they gave it a really good go, and they were great. So what I loved watching that Luton team. It was every game with them was like chaos. It was great, including our away win. Was it when Neto scored that ridiculous goal?
Did about 15 celebrations as well.
Yeah, yeah. So I liked his Luton team a lot. So whether we see that same level of intensity is yet to be seen. We alluded to earlier, 52 goals with that team is. I honestly think that is very impressive. With the forwards that he had. So if he can get his hands on what I think, on paper is a better forward line, then we might be able to see Wolves actually be more attacking and more intense. I mean, to be honest, if I don't really care if we win 1-0 or 4-3. I just want to see us win games. I really, really do not care too much about how we win games as long as we're effective and we're actually using the players in the squad. So I think for me that's the key thing. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I guess we're coming back to the point around the objective of the season, what we want to see from the team, right? I mean, I know personally that I'm not desperate for us to stay in the Premier League if we're just going to keep doing a rescue mission every single year, right? It feels like Groundhog Day, and you're not getting the bang for your buck for your season ticket ultimately. And there has to be a conversation around that at some point, and in the context of the way the club is being run, etc. When the fans are very visibly, pointing out errors in the way that the decisions are being made, right? We could see certain things coming, and you can't kid football fans, um, for years and years around how competent you are as an ownership. And I think that plays into the idea that, and to be honest, there have been spells in games this season where the crowds got up, the crowds got behind the players. I don't think Wolverhampton Wanderers fans are particularly bothered about style. They want to see their team, though, getting into the final third, and they want to see that intensity and, you know, hitting, putting teams under pressure and, really making Molineux feel like a place players don't want to play football. At the moment, it's a place that our players don't want to play, right? Um, so I can see Edwards really trying to play on that idea. He played in a Mick McCarthy team at one point, right? And we know what that was very much all about, wingers and two strikers, and we were successful in that way.
Graft.
Yeah. So I'm not expecting us to turn around and start playing really really nuanced and detailed stuff. Partly because we don't have the players to, but I think the fans can buy into that sort of thing. Then I guess we've talked a little bit about January in this, but in terms of profile of player that you'd like to see come in, what are you thinking?
I think it's a fair question. It seems ridiculous given that we spent a decent wedge, albeit it was recouped by the sales of Cunha and Aït-Nouri. But this squad needs significant work. I think you look at a Chachua at right wing back right now, and he is athletic, he's quick, he eats up the ground. His recovery speed is ridiculous. And I think in quite a few different systems, he'd probably be quite a serviceable player. I would be worried, though, that when it comes to final ball, and we saw it a couple of times on Saturday where he managed to hit the byline and it was a cross that was spooned out of play, for example, that we can't be overly reliant on that left-hand side for chance creation. And if it is going to be something similar to what Edwards has done in previous jobs, where we are going to be crossing the ball a lot, opposition sides need to know that threat can come from either side, because otherwise they will just sort of overload our left-hand side and they'll smother us and they'll make sure that the ball gets out to Chachua knowing that there's no quality coming from over there. I'd be half tempted to look at someone over on that side of the pitch that we know can deliver quality from deep and also gets the byline. It seems harsh because I actually quite like Chachua. I don't mind him as a player at all. But I do think if that's going to be the system, then we're going to have to look in that area. The other thing I think, and we've not mentioned him yet, but who's going to be our Ross Barkley in this side? Because Barkley was unbelievable for Edwards at Luton. He dragged them up the pitch. He could play out of pressure. He carried the ball well. He added goals to his game as well. It was ridiculous. We all assumed that post injuries and being let go by Everton and whatever, he was not even half the player that everyone was assuming he was going to become. And all of a sudden at Luton, he looked like he could be on the fringes of the England squad again. He was that good. I think that might need to be an acquisition in the midfield as well.
Could
Let's say he
could
does go to a 3-5-2, for example. And
could Ross Barkley
sorry,
be our Ross Barkley?
Is it too on the nose? It might. He could be. Where is he now?
He's at
Is it
He's at
Villa?
Villa. Yeah, he's at Villa.
He's at Villa, and he's homegrown. We only have space for that in the squad. Yeah, for a short-term deal, to me, it kind of makes total sense. But it'll take the club to be semi-smart about what they're trying to do, right? So.
Yeah, and I don't remember the last time this club was semi-smart about anything, to be honest. But it's not the worst shout. Yeah, I mean, why can't it be him? I don't think we've got much of a sample size to go off of this season to say what sort of job he could do. If it's not him, then like you say, it needs to be homegrown, and there needs to they don't necessarily need to replicate the sort of goals he scored for them as well. He wasn't exactly prolific, but just chipping in was helpful for them. But someone that does drag us up the pitch, that can carry the ball. I'm not Andre's not that sort of profile. João Gomez on the ball sometimes makes me weep. Like he's so good off of it, but there are times when he gets on the ball that I just think that an attack's going to break down because he's going to go the wrong way with it or he's going to lose possession. That's quite a big area as well. I think is can we find someone that will do that job, that will drag us up the pitch? Maybe he gets the ball under pressure and he can just beat a man, drop a shoulder and go. I think that's quite a big area as well in January.
Tom, any thoughts, any players you might have considered to this point?
Yeah, I completely agree with what Dan said. I think creative, or at least a midfielder that can drive for the ball. I'm still frustrated that obviously Coventry are doing well, but I would have loved Jack Redoni. I really like him as a player. I think he offers us something different. I mean, we're not going to probably get him now with how good Coventry are, but just a box crasher. He's arriving late, could drive with the ball, decent passing range as well. The issue is obviously the homegrown quota. In terms of right wing backs, English right wing backs, off the top of my head, I can't really think of one that stands out. Kyle Walker-Peters probably would have been my pick in the summer. Obviously, West Ham picked him up, so that's probably not going to, that's not going to happen. But yeah, I think we need either a ball carrying or a creative midfielder type. Honestly, Barkley's a great shout. That's a really, really good shout. I mean, if we can get any sort of form out of him, he could be a really decent pickup, especially for just where we are on the table. Definitely need more depth out wide. My gosh, I mean, the fact that we only signed Lopez and Arias as wide players was ridiculous. I couldn't believe they didn't go in for at least one more winger. You don't want to potentially stifle Mane's development, but Hwang, I think, is better centrally. I don't think he's that good out wide. So I think we need some wide players. Harry Wilson, another one that apparently, reportedly, Vitor Pereira turned down. That would have been a really good signing. Premier League experience. He's got a goal in him. Quality in the final third. David Brooks, another one that we could have potentially had maybe if Hobbs was still director. So that sort of ilk of player, really. I'm sure once we get closer to January, we might identify some targets in more detail. But at the moment, I think that sort of players who can carry the ball, players who've got decent contributions in the final third, a bit more pace as well, because we do look quite slow. Arias isn't particularly quick, neither's Hwang. Not Arias, Strand Larson, Tolu, they're not fast. We don't really have any pace. I still don't think we've really replaced Neto. Obviously, Carlos Borges was supposed to be that. He didn't really end up being that. He's doing really well at Club Brugge now, so it's just, it's getting the players in, but it's also getting them performing, because we've had so many decent players that have come through at Wolves that have gone on to do great things after leaving. So I think we definitely need some pace, though. I mean, this team just feels far too slow at the moment.
Yeah, there's basically no semblance of an idea around counter-attacking if there's no pace at the top end of the pitch, right? If you can't transition, there's no point in trying to counter-attack. So, and that's why I think we barely saw it under Vitor, which it's got so much to answer for, that guy. But anyway, I mean, we had a few names mentioned from our summer transfer window picks then, but I was having a look, keeping tabs on a few of them. Amir Richardson, one that I picked out, has not played a minute of football at Fiorentina this season. And I don't know if that's a damning indictment on the fact that I picked him and he can't get in the team there. But they're in a relegation fight. And I was like, just go and get him. He's 6'5" as well. Vitor would have loved him. But
beast.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, there's definitely work to be done in the market. We've seen suggestions around the fact that we might be shopping in the Championship. I guess if we are to attract anyone, in inverted commas, it's likely to be someone who has a shot at playing football at a level that they've never played at before, and ends up just standing still if we go down. Right, that's probably a smart thing to kind of target, as well as the dregs of the other Premier League side. So, like Ross Barkley, yeah, really really exciting times. Yeah, I guess we'll kind of call it a night there, gents. But just to wrap up, Rob Edwards, how confident are you on a scale of 1 to 10 about him being a successful manager? I'm not going to say keep us up, but a successful manager during his tenure as a Wolves boss. Dan, I'll start with you.
I think I'll go. Do you know? I'll go for a 7 because I think with this club, authenticity goes a long way, and I think what stunk so badly about Vitor, and yes, I'm going to go back to him. I have to do it. Was the inauthenticity of it all. Force yourself to the pubs all you want, mate. It's not going to be good enough in the end. Edwards does at least understand this club for all its pitfalls. He gets us as fans. He understands that getting Molyneux on side is going to be more than half the battle at this point in the season. Even if we go down, I think he is probably the right appointment for us at this time. There are probably other names out there that I certainly would have preferred, but there'll be a number of factors that go into why they wouldn't have been realistic, whether they're financial, whether they're aspirational. It just wouldn't have happened. And so, yeah, I'm going to give it a 7. I'd go higher, but Fosun's hand has effectively been forced by different factors, and I can't rate them any higher than that.
Yeah, I'd actually go the same. I'd go the same. I think building a rapport with the players and the fans as quickly as possible is really important. And Edwards has proved that pretty much every club he's gone to, even though he's left Middlesbrough in a bit of a cloud, initially he still built a very good relationship with the fans, which is probably why they're as annoyed as they are that he's leaving. So he is a manager that's capable of getting players and fans on side. We need that right now. He's ambitious. He's a young manager. He's got experience in the Championship and the Football League, which, if we do go down, which is looking likely, is going to be really important. Under Fosun, the first couple of appointments, Zenga didn't have any experience. Lambert was the person that they brought in, and he sort of steadied the ship. So, I do think that having someone who knows the Football League well and knows the club well and has a reputation for getting people on side is the best that we could realistically do in the position we're in. So, yeah, and like Dan said, I think tops out at a 7 because of we don't have much wiggle room in January, and what a Wolves transfer budget looks like in the Championship is yet to be seen. So, we'll have to keep our eyes and ears out for that. But I honestly do think that this is probably the best we could have done in the position that we're in.
So there you have it. Rob Edwards officially appointed as the new Wolves manager. Thanks again to Tom and Dan for their extensive input to that analysis of the appointment. Could it be the case that we've brought in our Ivan Juric to Southampton, or an example closer to home, maybe Dean Saunders, and we're just on a downward spiral to nothingness? Or have we appointed the kind of Kenny Jackett reincarnate ahead of time? Perhaps we will stop the rot, or if it does continue somewhat, resurrect us from the Championship and drive us back towards the Premier League. It remains to be seen.